Good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, which is hosted by Wynos Venture Engine. I'm Shrishruti Sriram, the Head of Marketing and Partnerships at Wynos. Wynos is a technology platform for business intelligence and fundraising analytics for early stage startups and entrepreneurs. The webinar today is a part of the webinar series of our Clarity product. So before we begin, a quick reminder to please keep yourself muted. If you would like to keep your video on, please feel free to do the same. Right now, I have everyone on mute to avoid background noises that may distract you from listening to the webinar. Throughout the presentation, I will be managing the chat functionality, and you can enter your questions and comments in the chat box throughout the presentation. If you'd rather ask in person, you can use the raise hand icon on the control panel to indicate that you have a question or a comment. And once you raise your hand, I will unmute your line so that you can ask your question. So let's start. The topic for today is bootstrapping in pure SaaS and what Arun has learned from the Y Combinator online startup school program. So the concept of bootstrapping is nothing new, and it usually refers to financing and growing your business without the need for external assistance in the form of capital investment. So there would be a lot of challenges faced while a venture is starting out, such as decision-making processes, as well as team productivity. So there is a buzz in the SaaS universe around bootstrapping, and the wind has changed in some way, which has spurred a conversation in the topic. And so this is what Arun aims to cover today. Arun's venture Relog was a part of the Y Combinator's online program, out of which only nearly 40% graduate from it. They were a part of the winter 2020 cohort, and today Arun will talk about his learning from the sessions and how it helped him focus on the right tools and practices to be adapted by bootstrap SaaS ventures. So over to you, Professor Thilaisi.
Good evening, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you all again in this webinar. And this is the fourth in the webinar series that we've been having. And the philosophy which we are looking at this webinar is it's a program for the entrepreneurs and by the entrepreneurs. We are essentially getting in entrepreneurs who have something interesting to share on a very, very specific topic. And entrepreneurship is so challenging, and it's always great to interact within the peer group on specific issues that concern all of us today. So in that context, the topic today is going to be extremely important, which is bootstrapping. So as we all know, the funding environment is going to be very different whenever we come back to normal. And bootstrapping is going to be a very, very critical strategy for most of us entrepreneurs. And therefore, this topic is extremely timely. And it is also good to hear from a very young entrepreneur in terms of how they made certain decisions when they went about bootstrapping as a strategy. So without any further ado, let me request Arun to begin his webinar. Over to you, Arun.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Shruti. Hope you all can hear me well. All right, guys, a quick introduction about myself before we begin this webinar. So I have worked as technology lead for a couple of startups earlier. One is Rentomojo, a rental startup in rental e-commerce. And then other one is Way2SMS, which you might have heard of. They're right now into news. So after that, right now I have started this venture called Relog, and currently we are 4 of us. 2 of us are full-time founders, and 2 of us are part-time. So I'll be walking you guys through the experience that I have had for past few months in making Relog possible. The product that we imagined, the ideas we had, and the brainstorming we had, and the challenges that we faced. We all happen to apply to Y Combinator online startup school, which is open for everyone to access, the course materials. So what I'll be doing is I have picked the best learnings from that program, and I'm going to share with you a few of them in a while explaining our journey through the program. All right. So let me start with the definitions of these two terms that we are looking at: bootstrapping and pure SaaS. So bootstrapping, to me, the definition that I would like to adhere to is using as minimal resources as possible and as minimal resources that you have to make a product possible or to create value for the customers. And pure SaaS, basically, you might have heard of SaaS businesses, which are software as service businesses. By pure SaaS, what we mean here is companies which deliver software value through a through a cloud medium, through an interface or mobile interface or a desktop interface, and they don't follow traditional models of software delivery methods. For example, a company doesn't go to its customers to install their software on premises on their own specific hardware. It won't do that. In pure SaaS, the focus is mainly on the software that the company delivers, and the changes and the improvements are to be, so they analyze customers' behavior on their products to improve it. So that's the focus of pure SaaS products. So I have broken down the learnings that I've had into these phases. The first one is conception. I'll be talking about the ideas that we have and how to go about them. And the team, how do you pick your teammates and not spend too much in constructing a team. And then I'll talk about the product and the processes that you can follow and the techniques that you can follow in making it a very seamless process of product development. And then I'll talk about attraction. All right, conception. So I have a lot of friends that who can be considered as aspiring entrepreneurs. They have a lot of ideas daily. The moment they get an idea, I'm sure what they do is they go to GoDaddy or Google Domains to book a domain, but the domain stays in their accounts forever. So this is every one of my aspiring entrepreneur friend has a bunch of domains in their name lying there without acting. So what happens to certain entrepreneurs who take it to the other level, who take their ideas, accumulate a good team and develop, and those guys who have ideas accumulated in their accounts forever, is that the understanding of the nature of startups becomes really, really important. So by nature of startup ideas, what I mean is, this is an idea shared by Kevin Hale, one of YC partners. There are different categories of ideas that we can look at here. For example, popular ideas. Popular ideas are the ones which cater to a large number of audiences. For example, people want to share images with their friend circle, right? So that's a popular idea, right? Or we have urgent ideas, for which people need immediate action. For example, you might need a product development tool for your business because you're starting operations, which is a very urgent requirement. All right, and then there are ideas or problem statements that are constantly growing. For example, everybody wants to be productive. Everybody wants to be organized. So that creates scope for startups like Todoist or Pocket, a bunch of startups. So for them, there's this ever-growing need which they aim to capture. And there are other breed of ideas or problem statements which are really expensive. So these expensive ideas, basically, people face a lot of problem in paying for that. So what we can do is, okay, you can say, I'm going to develop this I'm going to develop this product which solves certain problem, which is currently expensive, but I'm going to give it for a lesser price. All right. And then there is one last interesting category of ideas that we can have, and that are frequent. So these frequent ideas are very interesting. I'm going to explain why now. So if you look at Instagram, or if you look at any addictive social media application, there is one characteristic that makes them very addictive. In fact, you don't even consciously open the apps. You tend to realize that you're in the app, spending a lot of time, and then the time flows by. Um, so the reason for that is, if you observe what the product delivers, you have a very interesting pattern in there, which is a real life event which happens regularly or very frequently, and then they've associated it with a particular use case through an app in the user's life. For example, when you had mobile phones with just cameras, you used to take pictures and save it in your local storage. And then your craving for social acceptance generally became a very strong use case for apps that brought you that functionality. As in today with Instagram in your phones, basically whenever we think of a image, we don't think of just capturing it. We think of sharing it with everyone. So the association for capturing an image and sharing it with social circles is what Instagram caters to. And today you open Instagram instead of your default camera app in your mobile phones. So which is what makes it really, really important for us to understand users' habits and look at what they do frequently in their lives. And the empathy that we have with the target customer segment will will play a very crucial part in shaping up your product. And then the second point that here I have is disown ideas and analyze objectively. Typically, what happens in ideation phases is that you come up with an idea, and then you start convincing your teammates or your friends that it is something worth being solved right away. Basically, that as the more you do it, the more you become emotionally attached to the idea. And then your team comes along, or you speak to your customers, and if you hear any contradicting ideas or problem statements that come along in your journey, you're going to discard them because you have high emotional attachment with your early idea. So the key thing here to follow is have as many ideas as possible. The author of Atomic Habits, James Clear, states that you have to cross a lot of obvious ideas before you arrive at a great one. The first idea that you might have may feel like it's it's the idea and breakthrough, but generally idea is not a product. A product will become accumulation of lots and lots of ideas, very focused, and you converge at a particular product. When a lot of ideas come together in a product, how do you communicate with the user on what the product does is what I think we'll look at in further slides. And then the third point is surveys and creator bias. So this basically, while having ideas, immediately one thing that I have my friends do is being afraid that people might copy, people might take your idea and steal it. But I think the main problem there is that you're not in any way transferring this idea to your friend, or the key thing, the main resources in a startup will be spent during development and not during ideation. And these surveys, I have some tips regarding how we can talk to our friends and shaping up our ideas. When you start talking to your friend about an idea that you have, or creating a product for that matter, what happens is you put them in the shoes of a creator, which is I think which I find it very hard to capture wisdom from. So generally, what you have to do instead is to take the problem statement and discuss about the problem statement. You save all the discussion involved with the solution that you have in mind with your teammates. And the product needs to be shaped up with your team while you discuss the problem statements and understand and empathize with the people you talk to. Like big businesses, like funded startups, basically, because I'm talking about bootstrapping, there's this assumption that you don't have money at all. So which makes it really hard for you to conduct surveys at a large scale. I mean, you don't get enough data to derive certain early stage decisions. So all you have to rely on are personal conversations with your friends. people say that it's not scalable, but in the initial stages, that's what you've got to do. But the benefit that you're getting out of it is having first-hand conversations with the people who have the need for it and understand what the need is, and being flexible enough to modify your idea to share it with as many number of people as you want until it gets to a proper shape. And the fourth point I have here is collecting specific feedback. So a lot of times I waste time in listening to feedback which sounds really abstract, which says, okay, this is a really cool idea. I might use it. All right. Or anything that goes around this concept of abstract judgments on an idea. What usually happens is you are not going to modify or constructively build up your idea from there. As in, you have a very raw idea initially, and then you've got to transform that into a product. You need a lot more small ideas that come together to form the product. Any abstract judgments at that point are not going to help you. So this will basically allow you to save a lot of time. If you find the right people for your idea, or if you think, okay, these are the people that have this problem that which I want to solve, then talking to them will give you that specific feedback you need to constructively modify and improve your idea. All right. Okay. So the next, so if you guys have questions, we can pause at every stage. So I'll be discussing about the product next. So I can answer some questions now if you have any. Shruti, if you can find some questions for me if there are in the chat.
Hi, Arun. So there is a question from Keshav. So he said he has a startup idea and that he's working continuously on the model. And that his question is, in the starting time, my own venture, there is no, it's not possible to bootstrap because there is no budgeting. So is there any hope for ideation stage funding?
All right.
Are you clear with the question?
I understood the idea.
Okay.
So I understood the question. So as I'm talking about pure SaaS startups, there are a lot of freemium services from let's say email service providers to infrastructure providers that we can avail. I'll be discussing about all of that in the product section here, and then the next section. So we haven't on Relog and the product that we are working right now, we haven't spent much. Our burn rate was roughly around 2,000 to 3,000 rupees per month on an average, which is quite low. All right. Any other questions, Shruti?
Arun, why don't we address the questions at the end of the session so that there is a continuity?
All right.
Tab on the questions. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Let's do that. Okay. All right. So the team, right? So how do you pick your team? So there is this concept called product team fit. A lot of people overlook. I don't know any entrepreneurs who really talk about it. So these are some of observations that I've made in the past few months. So when you have a product idea, when you're picking people, so if you're picking just the employees, let's say for example you hire let's say you need iOS developers, you hire some iOS developers and then ask them to do something. All right, that's very transactional. All right, but the initial teammates that you hire and the core team that you hire, it's going to be really important, because all of their ideas combined shape your product. So the product team fit is really important, and the advantages that you have, or a particular characteristic that you can look for, is whether these team members have first-hand experience in experiencing the need, first-hand experience in realizing the need. Have they seen anyone who needs the product that you're building? Have they themselves have the need for the product that you're building? All right, that's going to help a lot, because as you iterate, the raw idea that you had converge into a specific features that you might have. But ultimately, as you brainstorm with your team, that's going to help you a lot. These teammates will bring a lot more wisdom than just regular transactional employees. So I would personally prefer people who really have the need and have the skill set at the same time to build the product, to build the, to create the value that you are aiming for. And the second one is version 1 of great culture. So what I have seen, so if you compare it with a very well-funded startup with experienced people, like say people have 20 years experience in their respective sectors, and they pull together resources, they put together a team to build a product. So what they as the team gets bigger and bigger, they look at the values they should stand by. And if you have looked at any of the ID cards of these multinational companies, you will find behind the ID card there will be a set of values that they want employees to follow in regular life. But what happens is employees don't even have or think about these values consistently. So so version 1 of that, what you can follow in your early stage venture is by focusing on the habits that your team has and the consistency in the processes that you have. As in, you don't aim for let's say, you don't just say we are inclusive. All right, you focus on small habits that your team has and list them down. And then a simple habit might sound something like this: every day when I log in to our product management system, I look at every new issue that has been assigned to me. All right, something like that. All these small habits will come up together in the initial stages without you spending any time in hiring a corporate to handle this in defining the culture. That's going to help you in the early stages. And then there is this interesting concept in team communication, which we have also, that's called asynchronicity in communication and work. We have also faced these issues while in development. Usually what happens was the person who manages the issues and the product is going to raise these issues, and sometimes he may want to talk to a developer, or sometimes he may want to get a progress report on a particular issue. All right, what happens is they text in the real-time communication. As most of us now use real-time communication channels, we also used Discord for communicating real-time, as we are completely remote and developers are sitting elsewhere, scattered around. So this tendency to have immediate response from the person you are addressing is going to cause a lot of issues. As in, you may think that the person is not on, even though it may be working time, but developers and employees really need their time in addressing the issues or addressing questions. So this asynchronicity is going to become a really huge factor in reducing the stress levels of employees. As in, the moment, you can think of it this way: if an issue is getting lagged, or if a particular milestone hasn't been met, your default assumption won't be that your employees are not productive, or one of your employees is to be blamed for such a low activity on that issue. That won't be the default assumption. Your default assumption would be to define it more, to give it more. So there must be some trouble that the developer or the employee is facing in getting the task done, which is usually the definition that is required in the task. The developer might not be aware exactly what to do, or the definition is very abstract. Sometimes I've seen teams create tasks like build a landing page for Relog. All right, so that's going to be a huge task, and that will be a collection of various number of tasks. So there is a simple tip that we all followed in Relog, which is you can define a task by saying that a task is something that can be completed with not less than in 2 hours, or not more than in 2 days. All right. So if it is less than 2 hours, it is something that you can quickly get around, and you don't need a task and a discussion thread for defining it and all that. If it's going to take more than 2 days, what you're going to do is you've got to split it up into multiple tasks, and have your Kanban or any other product management system handle it. All right. So the definition of the plan is basically what I was talking about. It's the degree of distinctness in what you define, in what is to be done today. You may have a great idea, a very big vision in mind, but today what's going to happen is to be defined very clearly to take one step further towards realizing realizing the vision. Live feedback during development. So this basically one of the things that YC online startup school have taught us is that this live feedback is going to change the course of your product development. So every week we used to submit updates to YC online startup school, which basically asked for what are the learnings that we had from the customers that we spoke to that week. So the idea here is to not freeze your conception stage before, as soon as you hire a team and start the product development, but even throughout the product development, even after discussing with your team and even while you are brainstorming, the idea is to talk to the end users, see if you can find a few of the customers that your target customer segment might look like, and talk to them and understand the problems. You only discuss, make sure, as I said, you only discuss problems with them, as in, for example, Relog is a note-taking application. So a relevant question to ask with my customers would be to understand, would be that, for example, how many times have you thought of writing something down and remembering it for future? As in, you place your keys somewhere, you want to remember that, you want to note it down. So I asked them, what is there, do you at least feel the need to note down certain things in life in an ad hoc manner? That would be a relevant question. All right. So a non-relevant question would be that, okay, I'm making a note-taking application, what do you think? Or I'm making a note-taking application that has these features that other note-taking application contains, what do you think? So because as soon as you mention that, they're going to get into the creator shoes. So they're going to start brainstorming with you. They won't be explaining with you the need or the need that they face or the problems that they have anymore. So that's one. And you have to be always ready to improvise while you're in the product development stages, to listen to a lot of feedback from customers. So this is all of these things can be followed without spending much money, but definitely you might need to spend some time on thinking about it. All right. So the next one is some tips in product development process. So the product market fit is something that people define when they discuss about, or discuss when they mention traction and go-to-market strategies, and all that. The reason that I've mentioned it here is that while developing the product, having an idea to reach this product market fit really helps. Now, what does this product market fit is like? A lot of people don't know what product market fit looks like, and there are a lot of definitions, of course, floating around the web. The two more interesting ones that I've heard are: a product market fit is when at least 40% of your users feel really disappointed if you stop giving your product, if you stop your product operations today. This is one definition that I like. And the second definition goes something like this: the product market fit is when you stop worrying about new features to build, and you start thinking about all the users that are coming in. So you are more worried about scaling the infrastructure, keeping or maintaining the software versions that you have already, and keeping your service stable and up all the time, and giving support and all those things. So that's when that's the stage in a startup's life cycle when you really know that you have reached the product market fit. But so during product development, how you can imagine such a scenario, or how you can get to certain get to that stage quickly in your startup, is what I think will definitely help while product development in choosing certain features. So for example, if you have brainstormed with any of the friends, the idea that, let's say, for example, if you look at Todoist, and what is stopping any other developer in the world, there are millions of developers, what is stopping them to create another Todoist application or another Pocket application, right? So the idea is not that important here. So the framework they use, so they have a lot of ideas which accumulated which manifested into this product. But to develop such a product, you can copy its state today. If you look at Todoist, and then you can copy it as is, but you can't get the course of the company right. As in, what is the framework that they might have used to discard any idea that doesn't align with their product vision, exactly what they want to deliver. All right. So that is something they internally do. So it really helps for early stage bootstrap startups to have such sort of discussions early on. You need to discard a lot of ideas while on your journey to product market fit. And the second point is MVP versus MLP. By MVP, I mean minimum viable product, and MLP is minimum lovable product. So MVP is a very well-known concept, which is kind of coined by Eric Ries. This MVP, minimum viable product, in definition, will help you to. It's basically the most minimal version of your product that will help you to test your hypothesis. So why this became popular is because people generally tend to spend a lot of time and resources on developing the products, and when they go to the market, they might suddenly find that there's not enough need for their product. They then realize that they have wasted a lot of resource. So this MVP has manifested into a new form, that is by saying that, let's say for example, today we need to the hurry in completing the product development and releasing it in the market has crept into the definitions of MVP. As in, whenever people talk about MVP, they mean launch quickly, and then deliver something as soon as possible. It might not have the perfection that you need. And there is this another concept called MLP, which is minimum lovable product. So let's say, for example, you are into a productivity market and you are developing a productivity application, and there are some standards by which are already set by players which are in the market right now. For example, Todoist, if you look at app, the standards and the quality is already set. So users are accustomed to expect such sort of quality and standards. The threshold for saying that, okay, this is a product that I would like to use will already be increased by leaps and bounds because of the best product in the market. All right, so it becomes really tough to if at that point, if you go with an MVP and put it out in the market and say that, okay, I support new features that Todoist doesn't, but so this is my MVP. So you may get some early adopters, but it becomes really tough for your product to get mass adoption. As in, because they're going to compare it with giants, compare it with already known products. All right. So when such sort of scenarios arise, when there are already competing players in the market, how do you, without any money, develop a product and think that it succeeds? So is there any helpful insight that could help here? So I have one, which is basically finding a gap in a particular product. Let's say, for example, if you look at Todoist again, they have a lot of features, and they might not support certain feature because of their product setup. All right. So what you can do is center your product around that feature. You may compete with them on other features, but users are going to come to your product because of that feature. So let's say that gap can be in terms of product features, and sometimes the gap can also be in terms of the target customer segment they're looking for. For example, Discord today is completely catered towards gamers. All right. So when there is another communication to Slack says that we are focused on workplace environments, and we support every feature that we can do. Discord, both essentially deliver the same features. Most of the features are in fact the same, but the products are completely different, and so that allows them to get into the market. That becomes an entry point for any startup to. You can get into the market with players like Todo, very successful players, but you need an entry point, which is generally a gap in particular features that the successful players don't support, or particular customer segments that they don't speak to or that they don't cater to, right? And while in the product development, to keep the costs low, there are a lot of freemium services that are out there that we can use. The most valuable ones are for us for the past 6 months that we have been developing Relog. One is team communication. We've been using Discord for free completely. We stay connected all the time. And whenever there's a discussion, we keep the meeting short, but we can connect through voice. That's one freemium resource. And for our infrastructure, we have been using the credits that Y Combinator provided us. So if you really want, there are a lot of incubators and accelerators out there which provide these freemium services as soon as you go through certain program that they have, like YC. So we've got around $5,000, which roughly translates to around 2 years of runway with current expectations that we have in current traffic expectations that we have. So that is one great resource. And for email service provider, there are a bunch, but I think Mailgun has a really good service that they have, which provides certain freemium service which you can use for transactional emails for your product. Okay, and the fifth point here is quality and functional testing standards. So if you imagine a startup well-funded, started by experienced people, as I said, they're gonna outsource this testing to a different firm and say that the more you test it, the quality of the product improves. All right, and in software products, this is more crucial because you generally don't know what your, like, at what points your product breaks, or like as soon as you develop feature 5, so will the 4 features that you developed earlier work, or are they working in the current state of the application? So what they do is they throw all the testing strength they have at that. But in the initial stages, when you're bootstrapping, you won't have money to hire a testing team or have a lot of people test your product every time you make a build, right? So today you're going to develop one feature and you have to rerun all the functional tests with a particular team, right? That's not going to happen. So what helps here is having really high quality standards for the people who are developing itself. So when the discussions happen internally, so the standards that you have internally for testing the product, when you have the product team fit, as I said earlier, that's going to help here a lot. People will not deliver certain features unless they have complete confidence that they play very well in harmony with the features that are already there in the product. So those are the tips I have about product. And one final thing, so we are in the Relog is in closed beta stage currently. So we haven't tested any of the traditional any of the insights that I have on traction. But what helped us, or what made us ready for full scale public launch, is these 4 ideas. One is a focused one-liner. Throughout the Y Combinator Online Startup School, this has been the core idea. This has been something that a lot of startups spend time on figuring out. Because as I said, a product is an accumulation of ideas. A product can do a lot of things to compete with successful competitors in the market. But when you cannot go to your customer and say that, okay, it does all of this, so you might want to buy it, or it's better than to do this, so you might want to buy it. So coming up with this focused one-liner is going to be a very crucial for startup. And one thing that YC also promotes is that it's got to be a very frank and very simple one. If let's say if Relog is a note-taking application, I cannot go and say a revolutionary note-taking application built for 2020. All right, that would be a completely a bad focused one-liner, because it does not tell you exactly which platform it is available on, or where to get it, or anything like that, right? So it's got to tell the user what it is and exactly what it is, what value it is delivering. So we have arrived at one for Relog, which says iOS application for rapid note taking. All right. So a lot of note-taking applications don't focus on the speed in which users take notes. All right, that has been the ignored, or the gap that we were looking at, the gap in value systems that the other note-taking applications doesn't focus on. So we have chosen that, we have framed that focused one-liner that way. Similarly, for your startups, you can have your own focused one-liners, but it should be very frank and bold, and without using any abstract terminology like revolutionizing, and etc. And then there is the second point is product-led growth. So there's been a massive shift in recent times in how the sales pipeline in most of the SaaS businesses work. Typically, if you look at Slack, you imagine an enterprise-grade application being delivered to a lot of organizations at scale. All right, but their sales funnel doesn't, sales process doesn't look like a person goes to an organization to pitch Slack to that particular organization and get them, buy Slack. All right. Typically, what happens with Slack or any great team communication tools is that a particular employee in a startup starts using it, and then he says he pitches it to his colleagues, and then colleagues start using it, and then the management realizes that okay, that is a lot of our colleagues are using it, so why not we subscribe it? All right. So they start their sales journey process or process at a individual touch point, as in they make it the entry point for an individual to this product is very simple, and that's what they focus on. And all of the decisions in product led growth, all of your decisions are going to tunnel into some sort of product decisions. It does not mean that the product managers in your company will be the ones who will take decisions all the time or giving them complete authority to for everything in the startup. That's not what it means. But although tunneling all the insights that you get from sales, marketing, and other departments in your startup towards making the product experience better for the customers is what I think it means. And this is one of the great ideas that we've looked at, and we really look forward to utilizing such sort of ideology a lot. And the power of community. So we have interacted with a lot of startups from all over the globe during this YC Online Startup School. They organize a lot of group discussions with startups from different verticals. So we have interacted with a retail SaaS company from Africa, and we have interacted with a lot from Europe. So one thing that kept repeating was that a lot of startups are looking forward to embracing the power of community. So one founder explained that he had a friend who managed a business which just sells access to Slack channels, exclusive Slack channels. So there are people who are buying access to Slack to be, let's say, for example, exclusive entrepreneurship community based in Chennai. All right, something like that, and people will be willing to buy access to it. All right, and they really want to be part of these communities to learn more, to just foresee or to understand how others are thinking. All right, so when especially in the SaaS businesses, one thing that is very clear is that those products won't be won't do just fine without having a power, without having the community around them. So if I'm going for developing a productivity application, you might as well if you start a community in Slack or Discord, any public community to discuss productivity related tips or anything that related to your startup would really help. And these people are the ones who you get really valuable ideas from for constructively improving your product. And low cost acquisition channels. So I really wanted to mention one thing here that we have learned from one of the YC partners. So low paid acquisition channels are very obvious to a lot of startups. Even when you scale, even when you become a 100-member team, paid acquisition channels will directly get you the customers. As in, you might have certain milestones or end goals to meet by the end of the month. So you can pump in more money into Facebook marketing or Facebook ads or Google ads and get in more customers. But it generally is very temporary, and it is to be considered as a threat to your startup, because if you just have that, basically anybody can do that. As in, you are giving an opportunity for others to compete with you very easily. On the other hand, if you have community built around your startup and a network that is built around your startup, a network of Relog users will be very exclusive to Relog. They would request features, they would ask you, they demand you more features or more flexible pricing, and all that. So which of these low cost acquisition channels that help initially, what I found was this, as we have mentioned, personal conversations with individual users that you had already during surveys, and understanding or empathizing with the users to understand what the problem statement that you're wishing to solve. So those guys can directly work as your early adopters. And having a community together, put together around your product would also really help. And when it comes to there's one other advantage that I forgot to mention in product-led growth, because you would be completely product centric and you are tunneling all of your energies and all the insights that you have into some sort of product decision, or making the product experience better. In pricing, what will happen is you can there are primarily two ways of deciding what price you can offer the value that you've created for. One is cost based, depending on how much has it cost you to build the product, and then the other one is value based, which is by understanding what's the perceived value of your product is in users mind. All right, you can go. So typically, to understand this, there are certain very practical ways you can analyze the traffic and understand. But this product led thinking is going to help you to a very high, very good value driven pricing model. So which is later on you can ensure that your costs are not really high to hit the profitability as soon as possible, like in product market fit stage. But that's one cool advantage of product-led growth. So that's it, guys. Those are the ideas that I wanted to share today. So I can take in questions now. So you can ask it in the chat if you have any, or if you have more ideas for me. Also, you can share. I'll speak to the community and I'll share it with others. Shruti, are you online?
Yes, sir. So there are a couple of questions here.
Okay.
So let me start with. So Gopi has a question. He has asked you to give him some examples of SaaS startups.
Examples of SaaS startups.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Examples of SaaS. So any software that you use today comes in as a software as a service. As in, for example, known startups would be Gmail. Gmail is a SaaS, right? Even in SaaS, there are multiple categories: consumer SaaS, or SMB SaaS, or enterprise SaaS. So enterprise SaaS products are the ones which are sold to enterprise on contract basis, with a specific binding contract for a specific period of time in place. And consumer products are the ones you sell to consumers directly, as in through different media like App Store or Play Store, or through web. You can have a website through which you can deliver it. So those might be the SaaS products that we can look at. Yeah.
So Ramesh Shastri has asked a question. Can ideas in physical products like brick and mortar companies get funding through bootstrapping?
Can ideas, sorry?
Can ideas in physical products like brick and mortar companies get funding?
Okay.
Bootstrapping.
Bootstrapping. Okay. Generally, as we are discussing about the power of bootstrapping, the idea is to defer your taking funding as much as possible. So I haven't discussed. So when people talk about bootstrapping, they talk a lot about the personal challenges that entrepreneurs face, like peer pressure and other things, which might force you to get into some sort of investment as soon as possible in the early stage. But I would prefer to defer it as much as possible, because in early stages, when you don't have the value and you're going to take an investment, you're going to undervalue the whole venture a lot. So if you can survive, and the advantage that SaaS has over any other vertical is that today you have it's really easy to bootstrap. You can avail all the freemium services that you can, from team communication to ESPs to product management solutions. other SaaS products will help you, bootstrap. That's the cool thing about SaaS products.
Okay, and we have a few questions asking about the freemium tools that you have used. So can you probably list out?
Premium. Okay. All right. So for team, as I said, for team communication, we have used Discord, which is completely free. And for infrastructure, we've got around $5,000 as credit from YC. So similarly, if you join in, the next online startup school program, you would also receive if you graduate successfully. That provides, to our estimation, around 2 years runway. And for email service provided for transactional emails, for example, if some user signs up in your app, you might want to send a welcome email to the user. So for those, you can use Mailgun, which again has a very lenient freemium plan. And what else? For product management, we could have gone with Asana like tools, but because we are in SaaS business, it would really help if you do product management and also developer issue management at the same in the same place. So what we do is we use GitHub. Recently launched private organizations. I mean, you can start your own private organizations for free. So this has been a recent development in GitHub. So you can have a Kanban board for yourself. So we manage all of our tasks and issues there because it's a SaaS product. For other companies, maybe you can have a look at Asana or Trello for that matter. Yeah, those are the things that I could think right on top of the mind, but yeah.
So Arun, there is another question from Sujit. So he has asked if you can explain the Relog sales journey without as opposed to Slack. So Slack would be a good example for early stage startups. So he's asked if you could explain this journey.
Okay, so if I look at Slack and Relog, Slack is a purely enterprise grade application. Relog is built for an individual customer for rapid note taking. So typically, I didn't think of any of the. So I didn't have to compete with the idea that you have to give a demo to get an organization on board. All right, the thought that we can get an organization on board was not there in Relog journey. So we haven't totally yet experienced the sales journey of. We haven't started it yet. We are at a position where the closed beta is out. So we are accepting emails. So this is actually one of the advantage that bootstrap startups have. So we are right now in a closed beta stage. So we open up the application access to very specific number of users. As in every week, we're going to release around Relog to 50 users. Right, so that will really help us in understanding infrastructure costs or estimating infrastructure costs related to and understanding when to scale and what to scale and how to scale and how much can we spend on that. In the initial stages, this really helps because before we come up with a pricing model, we could really understand how much of the infrastructure costs have been met on a per user basis, right? So, so we really hope to go and experiment with making a community around the product. So that's what I'm looking for, like around in the productivity scope.
So there is another very interesting question. Srivatsam. So he has asked, what are your thoughts about offering the products for free in the initial stages, especially when the startup is bootstrapped and have no funds to give something for free to someone?
Okay, all right. So I'm to the journey that I've mentioned already. There is this phase where you really want to learn from the users. So which is you can definitely not. Let's say, for example, the stage that we are in, a closed beta stage, where you release a product for very specific users. And our 2 months runway with the free credits that we have in the infrastructure will support us in the closed beta stage. So the real focus is not on charging how much to charge the users, but the real focus in this stage would be to understand if there is anything that we can do to improve the product conversions, before we go to public beta or a full-blown public launch. So you've got no choice if you're in a closed beta stage, and if you are going into the, like, if you're going for a public launch, this in the closed beta, you will understand whether your product is very is a premium product or a freemium product. So if it is premium, that is, if your users are looking at it and finding a lot of value in it, if you are going to give it away for free, or if you price it really low, right, and the perceived value is really high, you sort of run into this reputation risk. People think that, is there something wrong with it, that these guys are charging really low, kind of thinking in users' mind is what I think will happen. So you've got to really estimate the perceived value in users' mind while you are in closed beta. And while in closed beta, you've got to give it away for free. Not, I wouldn't think any other way would work. And after the public beta is launched, you can test with the pricing model. After you launch, maybe you can, for example, say, I'm going to increase 5%. I'm going to increase the price by 5%. So now, how much percentage of the users are we looking at? How much logo churn are we looking at? As in, apart from, so if you look at users as a primary metric in your startup, so how much would you be sacrificing by increasing the pricing by 5%? So if you keep doing that, what YC partners suggest is, if you lose more than 20%, that's where you've got to stop. You've got to stop and say that, okay, this is the ideal price that I can go with. Those are a few ideas.
All right. So I'm just taking a look at the questions. So there is a question from Srivatsa. So he says that they are building SaaS for farmers, and what would be your advice for collecting feedback and evolving the product for users that are not so tech savvy?
Okay. We're building SaaS for farmers. So I would say farmers, if they are not tech savvy, to what I observe in these times is that people have mobile phones available. I mean, even farmers, they have mobile phones in their hands throughout. They're watching regional television channels. So what will really help is, what is the most crucial factor for you is getting your product into their hands in their own regional language. So they don't worry about how it works, or they'll easily adapt to your product if it is delivered to them in their own language. As India is a India has diverse set of people, and you have a lot of languages to handle. I think that becomes a major challenge.
Right. So there is a question on what exactly does Relog do?
What exactly does Relog do? So what we have done is basically started learning about habits and started to build a product for note taking. When we have spoken to more than 250 people to understand what are the types of notes they take, and what is generally that note taking behavior is like. So what we found was, a lot of people are starting to use it. I mean, today they think of organizing their life. Today they install Evernote. Today they install Todoist. By tomorrow they forget it. They don't. It's a graveyard after the third day of usage. The reason for that, our hypothesis is that a lot of ad hoc notes, the user generally wants to remember a lot of things. I mean, a lot of ad hoc things happen in daily life, but you don't have there's a lot of barrier in adding it to a big bulky application like Evernote. So what we thought was making a extremely simple application, focusing on rapid note taking, focusing on the pace of note taking. As in, you can take notes at a pace of your thoughts, or whatever, whenever they're happening, is what I think we focused on. So that's a gap we saw, and that's the hypothesis we want to test. And Relog also supports a lot of different types of notes. As in, not only notes, it supports links. It can support to-dos. It can, you can use it for adding movies or links or any other things. And you can easily navigate to any point in your past As in, it's just a single flow of nodes, ad hoc nodes in your daily life. So the user can easily navigate to a particular point in the past and check what nodes they have added there, and that's basically Relog.
Maruti Prasad has a question. He wants to know your take on progressive apps versus native apps for pure SaaS platforms.
Pure SaaS platforms. So if you look at progressive web applications, there are certain bottlenecks when it comes to progressive web applications. The primary one is the performance that you get and the experience that you get. If your product relies heavily on experience, for example, most of the startups in YC have unfair advantages when compared to other startups. So these unfair advantages come in. So when this unfair advantage that you have with your competitors is the product itself, that's going to matter to you a lot. The experience that the user has in the product is going to matter a lot. So your decision, I mean, if you're product led, it's going to matter a lot. So if you're going with PWAs, maybe you won't get enough. Let's say if you have cool animations in your product, that's not going to work. The product experience won't be smooth. But if you're an e-commerce application like Flipkart, it might work. So Flipkart is a well-known PWA, and you have some bottlenecks in sending push notifications to the user also, as I'm aware. So those are the restrictions and bottlenecks you have. But if you go with the native experience, one disadvantage is that you have to develop the product in multiple platforms. Develop for multiple platforms. So you have to maintain it. You have to maintain consistency among all the products, and you need to have versions of the API that support a lot of different versions of the products. So those are the two, I think, trade-offs.
So there is another question. What are the MVP test tools or MVP guide tools that you can list?
MVP tools, firsthand I have not used any, but I think by the founders of Lean Startup Mission, I think there is one tool. But I'm sorry, I cannot suggest anything right now at this point because I didn't use them. But I think you can definitely check Lean Startup methodology and a tool that I think they have online.
Sure. So Ayush has a question. Do you think that 5 years down the line, SaaS startups will be a big thing? So the recent innovations happening in electrical vehicles or quantum computing or green energy all seem to require a lot of initial investment.
Okay. So how is it connected to?
So he'd like to know if 5 years down the line, SaaS startups would be a big thing.
So my question is that 5 years down the line, how will anyone, like say a student like me, will be able to bootstrap his own innovative startup if he wants to in these fields? Thank you.
Okay, in these fields, so I'm not really well versed with these fields. But if the first part of the question is to be answered, 5 years down the line, will SaaS startups be worth building? If that is a question, then I think the mobile phone and the mobile phone usage statistics answers that really well. The number of times, you can look at stats like the number of times people pick up a phone and how they're glued to their mobile phones, right? All of the software is packaged to make them stick to the products very well. So it is only a battle for users' attention, right? It is always going to be there as far as these mobile phones are in everyone's hand, is what I think. So if you can deliver great value to the end user and make your products very sticky, then I think for next 5 years at least, I clearly see the stickiness getting more improved. Already we see a lot of products which are made which exploit the user behavior a lot. For example, some are even very addictive. Games exploit user behavior a lot, and they're like extremely sticky. So even SaaS products today, they use intelligent notification systems to keep the user, very engaged with their product.
So Arun, just one last question that we'll look at.
Yeah, sure.
So how do you identify and engage additional users each week during your closed beta stage? And
Okay.
And another part of the question is, what are your marketing channels and the branding strategies that you use?
Okay. So we one idea that we have right now is to use everyone. So everyone we have surveyed earlier. So we have to understand their needs. We have spoken to a lot of people, including friends of ours. So we made a huge list, and we've spoken to other entrepreneurs when we were in YC Online Startup School. So those are all of those people are in the list. So we are having this huge list from which we are selecting certain users and opening up closed beta 2. We have certain emails set up to understand how they're using the product, and my plan is to have one-on-one personal conversations with them. So I'm not trying to go with a very scalable model here, but the idea is to understand if we are really catering to their needs properly. And beyond, post that, really look forward to use the power of communities. So anything around, let's say, for example, today, if you have to launch a community, you can do it in a lot of ways. You can start a Reddit with a certain thread, a certain certain idea, or you can make a Discord public channel or Slack public channel and have discussions centered around what your company solves. So yeah, those are the easy channels that I'm looking at. So these channels, because they don't cost anything in the initial stages, anything more than what we spend for infrastructure. So that's
all right. So we have a couple of more questions, but I think we're a little short on time.
okay.
So maybe we can just take up one more question.
All right, no problem.
So somebody has asked for a brief on the Y Combinator startup school. What is the fees, duration, and benefit?
Okay. All right. So online startup school program happens twice a year. It happens for 8 weeks. So during the week, you will be given a lot of course material and group discussion to attend. You can talk to other entrepreneurs from across the world. You will be grouped with them by YC. And there is no fees at all for online YC startup school. And you're going to get a lot of deals that they provide already, like the one I said, $5,000 AWS credits. And you're gonna and much more. So a lot of SaaS services that your startup will be using it, they have subscribed with YC, and they'll give you a lot of deals that you can use throughout your early stage journey.
What is the selection criteria of YC Online School?
Are you asking about the online startup school program or the batch program?
Okay, yeah, online startup school program.
Okay, online startup school program, you've got to apply, but it is open for all the startups. There's no selection criteria as such, but most of the companies drop out during the program, because the operations are not in sync with what YC is asking for. Generally, they won't ask you to spend much time on it. They'll give you roughly around 2 hours of video lectures to watch, and one group discussion with 3 of the startups. So that is their evaluation criteria. So at the end of the group discussion, what they would ask is, they'll ask you that if you would join any one of the other 3 startups, which one would you choose? All right. So they'll ask the same question to other startups. So that's their way of understanding a really good startups. And there is no selection criteria.
Arun, a quick one.
Yeah, sure.
Will you be taking up one-on-one suggestive critical analysis of our startups?
So I can do anything that is asynchronous. Could be on LinkedIn. One-on-one, I might not be able to do real-time conversations, but definitely, I think you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. That works.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hey Arun, can you just talk about the marketing or branding of the early stage startups? Like, as they involve huge sum of money, like how do you deal with that?
Okay, all right. So a part of the presentation kind of answered that, but I'll just summarize the idea here. So your product is going to solve some problems, and it will be an accumulation of a lot of ideas or a lot of features. In fact, the customers and the customers won't be looking for all the features at once. People do comparison studies and all that, but generally with the very low attention spans, they look for one core feature that your startup or your product delivers. So the idea is to brand around that particular one liner, come up with that focused one liner and brand around that, and a lot of you can deliver a lot more features than what you say in that one liner. That one liner need not necessarily explain everything that you do, everything that you stand for or stand for as a company, right? But definitely that's something. And branding, so this is a journey, I would say, to understand what you stand for. So the team members you hire and the practices that you follow in the company, and all that is going to add up to your brand. But it's a discovery process and not very selling process, right? So as you build product together, you're gonna discover some things that your product stands for. Sometimes your customers start coming back to you and demanding for more features, demanding for your product to behave in certain way. All right, so that becomes slowly one of the characteristics of your brand. As in, is it more playful or is it more? For example, if you can compare Apple and OnePlus. When OnePlus started, they are a startup. They're going to make mobile phones, and there are very big companies like Samsung, Apple, and other companies which are making mobile phones. Now, what do they do? How do they sell to the customer? Do they come to the market and say that, okay, we are making one more mobile phone, do you want to buy? No, right? So they've got to stand for something, right? So they, to my knowledge, OnePlus stands for speed. So they've focused on speed a lot. They've focused on putting extreme configuration hardware in very cool packaging and standing for speed. So they have brought fast charging into the business, but they discarded wireless charging. If you look at it carefully, because they said they stand for speed, wireless charging of 2 years back was not that fast. So they made a clear decision not to support it. All right. While they are the ones who brought dash charging and fast charging, they're the first ones into the market. But so that's how I think consistency in standing for one thing and finding. In the early stages, it will be about finding that one thing. While once you launch publicly, it's about behaving around that particular idea.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Can you drop your LinkedIn address in the chat box?
Oh, definitely. Just a second. Let me do that.
So we're running short on time, and I know that we've not addressed all of your questions. So we'll definitely get back to you if we've not answered any questions here. And if you do have any questions that you've not already posted, feel free to reach out to me.
Sri Shruti,
All right.
thanks a lot for your time, and you did a great job bringing us together.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Arun, for a really interesting and lively session.
Thank you, Shruti.
Professor, would you like to take over?
I've shared my LinkedIn email address, guys, and yeah, you can send me a request. I'll connect with anyone from this group.
Nothing specific. Thank you, Arun, and thanks everybody for joining us. I hope it is, just taken us out of our whatever we have been thinking a daily basis, and maybe have some lateral thinking, speaking on a topic and listening to a topic that concerns most of us. Thanks again, and have a great weekend. And let's all hope that we will get off this lockdown sooner than later. Shruti, you can close it.
Yeah, so thank you all so much again for joining us today, and we hope to see you in our upcoming webinars as well.
Thank you.